3.
Good evening, actually, afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 10 Plus Information Evening. I bet you never thought you were going to get to this point, and now it's come about really quickly. Thank you for joining us. I realise it's quite an awkward time, but we have recorded it, so hopefully there will be other people able to see it after the event. So first up, this is just a good opportunity for us to share with you some of our facts, some of our findings, some of our anecdotal findings about 10 Plus. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat function, and we will endeavour to answer them as we go. But first of all, if we look at what we do, if this is nothing new to you in terms of our preparation for 11 Plus, and you, if we can look at the next slide, you'll see that our pathway document runs all the way from year 3. So we're starting to think about that exit into year 6 from year 3. So you can see there that we do our first cognitive ability tests, which is the verbal, non-verbal and quantitative reasoning. Those in year 3 are very much around the first time that they will have done that type of battery of tests, and so we kind of use that as almost a soft launch for the boys, just to get them used to doing an online assessment. Really, they obviously have their usual PIRA and PUMA, which is a termly assessment in English and maths. We also do our mentoring at that point weekly, and that's a really good opportunity to get them in the mindset ready for those big picture questions that we practice so very well in mentoring throughout. There's a senior school forum which we hold every 2 years, so that may be whilst your child has been in year 3, but it might be whilst they're in year 4. And they have a whole selection of the schools, but actually that's more to do with the 11 Plus process, really. So you can see that what your boys will do, this is available to you on the website. You can see that what your boys do throughout their time here is a nice steady climb up to that exit at year 6. So tonight really is specifically around the 10 Plus process. So if I could just explain, and the next slide shows those schools that do the 10 Plus. Hampton, Kingston Grammar and St James. So St James used to do 2 assessments in the 10 Plus. They used to do a February assessment and a May. They have actually dropped that this year and are only doing the May assessment. St James would often be for potentially a child who's quite anxious, could be attaining in PIRA and PUMA, could be attaining maybe slightly lower at this point, and we would like to see them sort of secure a place so that the anxiety for year 6 isn't great for them, or even sometimes for their parents. So sometimes that's quite a nice one to just have as a security. Then the other 2, Hampton and Kingston Grammar, are absolutely not that. So you, Mr. King is going to go through the data with you on those, but before we do, Hampton obviously very competitive, taken probably 25 places I think at 10 Plus, does change. Kingston Grammar taken 20 places at 10 Plus, 10 of those are for girls, so they only actually take 10 places. So you can imagine if you've got 250 to 300 pupils applying for those places, your odds are very small. And we try to make that really clear to the boys, because it's really important that they totally understand that this is by no means a reflection of their ability or their failing. This is very much a numbers game. So this is our first introduction, may I say, to a game of poker. This is how we start to talk to them about gambling and the unfortunate impact on the numbers for them. We don't really talk about poker. So we have Hampton and Kingston Grammar who sit those very, very competitively, and Mr. King will go through what they expect at that point, but also what that data looks like. Most importantly, on the next slide, please, Ed, they have it has quite a maximum, it has an effect on your children, obviously. So Mr. King and I would meet you to discuss whether we thought that 10 plus was appropriate for your son. Some parents will say they want to throw it in the ring because their hat in the ring because they want it as a practice. And actually it shouldn't really ever be used as a practice. If your son is really independent, it's water off a duck's back, has a total understanding of the fact that it's a numbers game, and whilst they're really very bright, it might just be that their luck isn't in that day. If they are going to totally understand that, go in with their eyes wide open and understand that actually the knock-on effect, you know, their bounce back, their bounceability is good, then we would say absolutely go for it. But the benefits of that are that yes, they've had the opportunity to witness it at another school. So for example, we have a boy who can be quite anxious in his assessments. He does do very well at school. We did say actually 10 plus, just experiencing the 10 plus might be right for him, just so that he could understand the physical building, etc. But ordinarily we would say to you that if your son is not going to bounce back appropriately, it would be very silly of you to go forward for it, because if I'm honest, we would then spend the next 2 to 3 months after those results come out. You would have done a lot of preparation with them. We would have done a lot of preparation with them. They get those results and they get a knockback, and you know what it's like yourselves. If you've worked really hard for something, of course you're going to be disappointed when you don't get a place offered. But they might take 2 or 3 months really to get their confidence back. What we notice is that it has a knock-on effect, not just their opinion of themselves and becoming kind of quite self-critical, but also a little bit imposter. Oh well, my teachers tell me I do really well, and so do my parents, and that, but I haven't got this result. They're slightly seeing themselves with a slight imposter syndrome. It takes about 2 or 3 months to correct that back, and those are 2 to 3 months where we could just be preparing them for the 11 plus as per normal. So whilst we absolutely won't say for sure don't do it, you would be very aware whether your boys are right for that yourselves. So yes, think about whether they have the bounceability, the bounce back. Really carefully consider, why do I want them to do this? What's the reason for me to pursue this? You know, is it because I want to secure that so that we've got something for security purposes before hitting 11 plus? Because if that is the case, the odds of you getting a place, an offer of a place, are so much smaller than the odds of them getting their first or second choice in year 6. So please think really carefully about that. If you are considering it because actually you're going to sit Hampton at 10 plus because Hampton is the only way for you, for your son, and you want him to sit at 11 plus as well, and you know you want to do it early, I understand that. But actually, if you have got St Paul's, King's Wimbledon, Claremont all in your view for 11 plus, and actually you're not really sure whether Hampton would be a contender, then why are we sitting them for that school? Now, some of our boys sitting at the very top end, and Mr. King will give more detail on that, have wanted Hampton for a number of years. Their parents have wanted that. They work very, very hard for 10 plus. They secure their place. It is the only school for them. If you are the right kind of personality at that point, you absolutely you get your yes for 10 plus, you throw yourself into your year 6 curriculum, and you have a great time and you thoroughly enjoy it and you do very well. The number of boys that happens to are very few. So that is a resilient child who's bounced back, who loves life, loves learning, has got their place and is all very happy with the bounce back from the process is what I mean. Very happy with their plays, bounces into year 6. Some of those children, however, have been working at that 10 plus for quite some time, and therefore, when they have been offered that place, go into year 6 with a kind of glass half empty view, a sort of view of perhaps not being able to, oh, we've been here, we've done that. I can't get as enthused about this learning as that person next to me. And we don't really want them to spend the vast majority of their year 6 time with us in that kind of with that kind of state of mind, really. So it is very, very dependent on the individual child. So for as far as we're concerned, we will know the children that have been put forward, the boys that have been put forward for that, who we feel are strong candidates, and you will probably know yourself too. One thing, my last parting words from a pastoral point of view is that burnout, and really making sure that we are wrapping around them and pastorally looking after them, because that it can be quite significant, the knockback. And if you think about it, in doing 10 plus, what happens is it opens that window of assessment it's a lot longer period for your son. So they'll be starting to get ready for that 10 plus, do the paper, get their results, and then go back into doing other competitive papers for other schools. Going into 11 plus, it's a long time to be sitting at that top level of feeling the pressure themselves, but giving that 100%. So please do consider it really, really seriously if you do want to go ahead with that. And, you know, Mr. King or I, Mrs. Johnson will be available for you to chat to about it. Mrs. Smith will always give you the facts and details about the schools if you need to, but please do think really carefully about it. Mr. King's going to give us some data, so that will just qualify, I think, a little bit of what we've been talking about.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mrs. Chong, and good evening, parents. So some of these results and scores should be a bit more clearer to you now that they're on the report, and the graph I'm going to show you this evening is the same graph I used at our reporting and assessment evening a few weeks ago. But if you've got any specific questions, please do just reach out to me about the data, and you can always CC in the form teachers. I've in the past met with all parents considering the 10 plus, and we'll continue to do that, and we can just see to what extent your son's scores align, if this is something that you really want to consider, and then I can talk more about the process thereafter. But historically, we track the data really carefully, and these are kind of average figures that we look at. So generally, the boys who've got a 10 plus place will have a mean CAT score of above 130. So that's a standardized score, which is putting you up in that really high sort of 98th percentile range. And remember, that's a series of 4 different tests. So they sit one in year 3, they've now sat one in year 4, and that's a quantitative test, a verbal test, a spatial test, and a non-verbal test. So it's a really high CAT mean score, and then their PIRA and PUMA results are on average. The PIRA is at 125 or above, and that's consistently, and PUMA is 130 above, and that's consistently. And those results have been very consistent for the last few years. So just in terms of the data, it is really instructive, because at the end of the day, it just helps us make a decision. You know, is his demeanor in class, the way he's working in class, aligned with what his scores are producing? Then he's got the pastoral kind of, you know, wherewithal to withstand the process. If all those things align, then we would absolutely support you to make a decision as to whether your son should do the process, or in fact support you for your son to do the process. What we have had at times in the past is where we've said to some parents that his scores are actually quite a lot lower, but they still end up pursuing it. They then spend weeks or months doing the work, and then only to pull him out closer to the time. And sometimes I feel like that can have quite a negative impact on their consequences as well. So please do, as Mrs. Chong said, consider it really carefully, and, you know, just have a think. You know, do his scores align with this based on what I've seen, or do you want to know some more? Just reach out to me. So we can go to the next slide, Ed. In terms of what the next so in terms of the assessments themselves, so from Hampton and Kingston, there's an English and a maths paper. Hampton only have a writing paper now, so they no longer do reading comprehension. But Kingston does a combination of both, and then a maths paper with lots of complex problem solving, and that's where they kind of really try and get to see those very high performing boys, because it's all about the application at the end of the day. It's very abstract problem solving questions that the boys are expected to tackle. And then following success in the exams, they will then be invited back for an interview, and the interview is not a determination of where, if they get called back, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've got a place. They then still have to sit through the interview. There may be an academic element to the interview. At times, these schools will add a slight English component to it or a mathematical component. They've been known to give the boys poems and pictures and that type of thing in the past, and so that they can really kind of just get a real sense of how they think on the spot, so that they're not overly prepped. And because the numbers are so small, they kind of really want to make sure that they've chosen the right candidate. So those are the three ways, along with a reference that I then write and we send through to the schools. So if we go to the next slide, Ed, the expectations of the boys who then do sit the 10 plus. There is a weekly club, so a maths and English club. It's for half an hour. It's often in the morning from 8 to 8:30, focusing very exclusively on exam technique. In maths, it's a lot of complex problem solving. In English, it's a lot of looking at reading comprehension, breaking down questions, and then applying that in an exam format. And then obviously working on a writing task as well, which helps them prepare for the Hampton exam. There are additional homework tasks that are set, and what I did want to say in this last point is that the teachers who've led that in the past, so it's often been myself, Ms. Stone or Ms. Lewis, heads of maths, or Ms. Johnston, head of English. We don't follow up that often with the boys, in the sense that we very much expect them to do the homework, and if they don't do it, actually it's their prerogative at the end of the day. These are additional clubs staff are giving up of their time to do it, and actually we want to see that the boys really are committed to doing it, committed to the process, because it isn't for everyone. But what I do want to say, I really want to stress this point, is that those boys who don't sit the 10 plus and therefore don't attend these clubs, they're absolutely not missing out. We are working on these things continuously in class anyway. These boys are just getting an extra half an hour each week, just with a couple of more tailored skills that we're focusing on, which absolutely forms part of the 11 plus curriculum, and forms part of the curriculum that the boys then are working towards when they sit for those 11 plus exams. These are things every boy at our school will do throughout their time with us. It's just that they may do it at a slightly different time. So we've obviously spoken a lot. I can see there aren't any questions that have come through yet, but I think we'll give you a moment or two just to pose any questions that you may have in the live event Q&A. And just while I'm waiting for that, I'll just reiterate the process. If you want to, or if this is something that you'd like to consider for your son, please just send an email, CCing in the form teacher to myself. What we'll then do is try and arrange a meeting with you or a quick phone call. And then if we've decided that it is a process that you will then want to embark upon, Mrs. Smith will send you a pupil profile form, which is just a lot of details about your son, his co-curricular involvement, his involvement in all aspects of school life, anything he does outside of school. It just helps us to write a reference closer to the time. Have any questions come through yet, Mrs. Chong?
Not that I can see.
There we go. There's one. Can boys choose to attend these clubs? I'm assuming the question is, can any boy choose to attend these clubs? In the past, we've limited to those boys doing the 10 plus purely for the reason that it's a lot more focused on just that exam technique. We've had some parents ask, can their son join? And actually, we have so many different intervention and reading clubs, and that often there may be a better club for the son, that boy to attend. So. And then there was another question, do these clubs happen for 11 plus? They absolutely do. In fact, they happen for an hour in 11 plus on a Tuesday afternoon. So that starts in the summer term of year 5. And the year 5s will be starting those very soon. Ms. Strong, there's a question about the academic requirements for St. James. Can you talk to that point?
Yeah, sorry, I was just answering what's been the school success rate at 10 plus for the last couple of years. So we've had 2 this year and we had 5 last year.
3 last year, 5 the year before.
Yes, sorry, 3. Does this happen for 11 plus as well? You've answered that. In terms of preparation for St James, we tend to find that our Pira and Puma are really good prep for them. They are the types of assessment that they will do at St James, as well as interview practice. So we'll obviously do those as well. I wouldn't suggest, if St James was an option, and that was what you were thinking about, I would suggest talking to either myself or Mr King, because that I wouldn't suggest then sitting into those 10 plus prep classes, because they will be at a whole nother level in terms of stretch.
This is Chong, there's a question. What are the associated success stats for 11 plus?
So we're just finalising our results now, and it's interesting. So what is quite interesting is some of those boys who sit at 10 plus for Hampton or Kingston, actually very few go on to take their Kingston Grammar place. So we've had very few that have sat it at 10 plus who will go on for it to be their school of choice at 11 plus. Hampton more so. So those boys that get Hampton at 10 plus, 2 of the boys that got Hampton 10 plus last year, in fact, no, sorry, 4 of the boys that got it last year are actually going to Hampton this year. And some of those boys are actually going with a scholarship. So they will have resat. So at Hampton, you sit again at 11 plus if you're going for a scholarship, and they will then do an academic scholarship interview at the same time. So in terms of, but that isn't to say that we've only had, in the last 2 years, we've only had 2 boys who have actually got their 10 plus and have not sat another school at 11 plus. They've just continued with that 10 plus place. They're the only ones. So invariably what happens is you get your place, you get offered a place, and then you decide, oh, well, we've got that, so we're going to sit for other schools as well. So in actual fact, it's for those people, it's a good security. Particularly, as Mr King said, those boys that sit at right at the top end, anyone that's just finding their feet, who's just coming, you can just see maturing, just at tipping point at the moment, it probably could put them off, and we would hate that, because actually we then spend, as I said, quite a lot of time trying to get their confidence back up, really. You will very soon see our published 11 plus results. We've got one more boy to place at this point, and once he's placed, we will of course publish our results. So you'll see them. We've got a really good spread at 11 plus this year. We've got a very good RGS, Hampton, Kings. We've got boys going to Kings. We've got a boy going to St Paul's. We've got boys going to Claremont, boys going to Reeds. We've got a really good spread, and we will publish those when we've completely finished.
Chong, so there was a question just about, do you suggest who does 10 plus, or is it for us to suggest? And it's really a sort of a combination of the two. We do reach out to some parents if they haven't often got in contact with us. But if you feel that your son sort of fits the criteria that we've outlined both pastorally and academically, then please do email me. And the other question was, do you have to sit 10 plus to get a scholarship at 11 plus? You can answer that, Mrs. Chong.
That's interesting. I'm not really sure of the answer to that. No, I'm pretty confident you don't. I'm pretty confident you don't. You don't need to have secured a 10 plus place. You can sit for so you're creamed from the top with your results, and then you're invited back for the academic scholarship paper. So you can either do that at 10 plus or 11 plus, but you would only sit for the scholarship at 11 plus. Sorry, I've just got some results in front of me, which might be quite helpful. So as in terms of our 11 plus results this year, we've had 85 offers to date. We'll probably still have a few more to come. 21 of those were scholarships, so a really good spread of scholarships. And if I just give you a couple of stats in terms of the most popular schools, and I won't go through all of them individually, but we had 8 accepted, offered 8 offers at Claremont, We had 8 offers at Helliford, 9 offers at Hampton, 7 offers at Kingston Grammar, 4 at King's College Wimbledon, 3 at Radnor House, 10 at Reeds, 6 at RGS, 6 at Tiffin Boys. So you can see 3 at St George's. We've got a really good spread of highly academic schools across the board there. And you know, we guide you through that process, so please don't think that this is the start of you needing to be worried or concerned about it at all. It really isn't. It's just to put you in the picture of what happens in the next 2 years for to support your boys through the whole process, and to support you as well. I don't think there are any further questions, so thank you very much for tuning in tonight. I really appreciate that. If there is anything from a follow-up question that you would like to ask, please do feel free to write to myself, Mrs. Smith, or Mr. King, and you will be in touch in due course should you have any questions. Thank you and have a great evening.